Today we test some muzzle blast control devices to see if they really reduce sound and concussion received by the shooter. Let's get started. This video has a very specific purpose. It is about whether blast forward devices can help reduce sound at the shooter's ear and concussion felt by the shooter and those near the shooter. This test was conducted using a 5.5-inch barreled Rattler in 5.56 NATO. The test is not about whether this is a good or bad caliber choice, nor about suppressing this firearm. It is about whether blast control devices work. By the way, I have two previous videos that discuss the best ammo for 5.56 Rattler. You might want to take a look at them. Imagine this is your home defense weapon. In the dead of night, out of deep sleep, confronting someone in your house. After your first shot, you would become immediately dazed. Being able to react in a short period of time thereafter could be impossible. While this also might be sensory debilitating to the bad guy, the likelihood it causes you a momentary freeze is very dangerous. You should understand up front that the 5.56 MCX Rattler in a 5.5-inch barrel length is a specialty, narrow-focused weapon. It is not a general-purpose battle rifle. Rather, it was initially designed for special military CQB usage. Designed specifically for the 300 blackout cartridge, it still has its uses in 5.56 NATO caliber. For me, its importance is being chambered in the most widely used and available U.S. military caliber. In circumstances where 300 blackout ammo might not be available, 5.56 would most likely still be found. I have a swap out setup for 300 blackout caliber, and it's a great weapon. But it's nice knowing that I can still make use of the most common round available. The devices to be tested are as follows: the Sig OEM flash hider, the Ultradyne Athena BFD, the Call Valley linear comp, the Maxim Defense hate brake, the Surefire Warden, the Noveske KX5, the HA Herrera linear comp, my home machined device, and the KAK long flash can. Sound measurements are recorded using a calibrated professional Larson Davis LXT QTR sound meter. Such sound meters are designed for a multitude of sound measurements. Peak sound pressure is only one of the values captured by the meter. I point out that the larger reading is the LZF measurement. The LZ peak decibel reading is smaller and located under LZF. Do not get confused and misread LZF when LZ peak is the important dB to capture for the gunshot. After the session is completed, the measurements are exported into Excel spreadsheets for permanent retention. You may have noticed screws in my flash hider. Why is that? I initially machined a muzzle device that mounted over the hider. Worked well, but was limiting. The screws avoid sound differences that might occur. Seeing the results in the format just viewed might leave one with the belief that none of these devices are worth the effort. It is important to understand that sound pressure measurement is not linear. This chart is a representation of the nonlinear way decibel or dB reduction works. The orange line represents dB levels reducing by 3 dB at each dot. The blue bars represent the true sound level being reduced by 1/2 with each progressively smaller bar. The bar on the left is the true sound level at 165 dB. The next blue bar is 1/2 the sound level of the first. The third blue bar is 1/2 the sound level of the second, and so on. Do not let the height of the blue bars confuse you. They each represent 1/2 of the previous bar. However, the height is not exactly 1/2. This is because the bars would quickly become too small to easily see in the representation. As said, the left blue bar is 165 dB. The next is 1/2 the sound level, but only 3 dB lower than the previous. Just reducing the dB level 3 dB has reduced the sound level by 1/2. Now it becomes a little clearer why small dB changes do make a difference. Let's now look at the captured results on a chart. The left vertical scale is the dB recorded levels. The bottom scale is the shot number for each sequence of shots. The 3 dots on each colored line are the dB level for that particular shot. The legend in the lower left assigns the correct muzzle device to a colored line. So who won? The first place was achieved by the Noveske device with a 3-shot average decibel reading of 160.6. The loser in the contest was the Surefire Warden with an average 165.8. Considering the fact that a 3 decibel change means the sound is half as loud, the average spread is a difference of 5.2 decibels between winner and loser. That means that 163.6 is twice as loud as 160.6, and the average Warden high of 165.8 is another 2.2 decibels higher yet, nearing twice as loud again. Positions 2, 3, and 4 were louder, but not nearly as much as the devices in the bottom half of the results. Another surprise is how reasonable the Sig OEM flash hider did, finishing second, 1.6 decibels louder than the Noveske. It still is enough that between the two, Noveske is only 3/4 as loud as the OEM muzzle device. Now let's not kid ourselves. The National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health considers a threshold below 140 decibels as hearing safe. And even then, that is not for long-term exposure. So none of these devices make the gun safe for your hearing. But maybe every little bit helps. Another factor to consider is that these figures are the average. A total of 27 shots were recorded. The extreme difference between winner and loser was 7.4 decibels, having or doubling the level of the sound almost 2.5 times for those extreme shots. But there is more. Not only is the decibel level important, the concussion, especially indoors, is horrendous in the 5.56 caliber. I was surprised to discover that the felt concussion during the testing did not seem to always correlate with the sound levels recorded. That's correct. Some of the devices that scored lower decibels did not seem to have a proportionally lower amount of felt concussion. The problem is that I found no method of accurately quantifying concussion. I had 2 cameras running during the testing, a GoPro 90 degrees right of the muzzle and my Canon behind where a right-handed shooter's ear would be to record the meter readings. So I fudged. I took the concussion I felt during the testing and the sound from the Canon camera near the left ear and guessed. My results were so tenuous that I would not even show them here. All I will describe is that the 2 devices which to me felt the least concussion and the 2 devices that I felt had the most concussion. If anyone can think of a method that might be reliable to measure concussion, I would be glad to hear it. It makes sense that my homemade device might produce slightly less concussion. It is basically a larger version of the Noveski. But even to me, the difference was slight enough to not make it worthwhile manufacturing my own when one could just buy the Noveski. On the worst concussion side, there were 3 or 4 of them that just seemed terrible. But the OEM flash hider did feel the worst to me. On the one hand, it is after all a birdcage device that intentionally ports gas out the sides of the device. The part that does not make sense is that it finished with the second lowest decibel average in the test. Maybe I'm just sensitive to that flash hider because I have shot the gun indoors and the concussion off walls and ceilings are terrible. Here are my conclusions. I would go with the Noveski KX5 device. I was hoping that my machine device would be an improvement, but it was not. But if one did not want to pursue the difficulties in suppressing the 5.56 in a 5.5-inch barrel, this may be as good as it gets. Now it is up to you, the viewer, to draw your own conclusions. Are any of these devices worth it? Remember that before any of these devices can be considered, the 5.56 Rattler owner must first get through the hassle and cost of removing the OEM flash hider. No easy task. Good luck. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions, concerns, or comments, leave them below.